Welcome to Erotically Neurotic, a sexy book club podcast. Join us as we take a deep dive into the world of romance and erotic fiction and have candid and hilarious conversations about sex, sexuality, and hidden fantasies.
Please note that each of our episodes will contain explicit content and language and lots of spoilers, so please listen at your own discretion.
Now grab your books and vibrators.
And welcome to the club. Erotic, neurotic, erotically neurotic.
I wish everyone could see us dancing as we listen to our own theme song of Amanda singing Erotically Neurotic, because that's what we're doing at this moment.
Especially while I have this little, I think this is your son's blanket, wrapped around my shoulders like a peasant. Caught in the cold.
I mean, it is pretty cold out here.
It's really cold, but I like it.
So, welcome to Erotically Neurotic, a sexy book club podcast, episode 5?
I think it's 5.
I think it's episode 5.
Maybe.
Who knows? It's been a few weeks since we've recorded.
It has, yeah, but in that time, we released our first episode.
Yes. We've had a whopping 20 listens.
To me, that's viral.
Honestly, we're fucking famous.
I think we made it.
I honestly think we made it. We're double digits.
We're double digits.
I mean,
twice over.
So we really win, and we're super excited.
Yeah.
We had, it took us a while to figure out Instagram.
Being 33 years old and Googling, how do you go down to the next space in Instagram?
We are not Gen Z, that is for sure.
How do you hashtag?
So now we're back to the fun part, which is just getting to talk about these freaking books.
Yeah.
That's all we want to do.
We didn't introduce ourselves. I'm Amanda.
I'm Kayla.
And this is Erotically Neurotic.
So we have to start with our Rose and Thorn. Again,
yes.
Based off of one of our favorite books ever, A Court of Thorns and Roses. Mm-hmm. One day we will cover that, but it's highly covered, so we're just going to wait.
Yeah, that's got to be a really special one.
Very special.
Yeah.
So, Amanda.
My Rose and Thorn?
Yeah.
Well, I would say for the Rose, we've actually gotten a lot of really positive feedback from people about our episode.
Yes.
That felt really good. I kind of thought it was going to be one of those things where everyone said, oh, I'll totally listen, and then,
not
womp
actually.
womp. But people really listened to it, and I got a lot of feedback from family, which is both amazing and also hilarious.
That's so nice that your family cares enough to listen.
Shockingly, all of their feedback jumped over any of our sex-related conversations, except for my one sister who said, I recommend not letting Dad listen to this. Let him support you in a different way. I was like, I wasn't planning on...
Agreed.
I don't think, A, he knows what Spotify is, and B, was I ever planning on having him listen to it.
Very true.
But, we'll tuck that away. Yep. Thank you. So, yeah, that was a really, really good Rose, I think. Just, really positive feedback we got from people.
I know, I totally agree. Even my cousin listened and said she was going to read Mr. Fixer-Upper for the next episode so that she could follow along. And I'm like, oh my God.
So you're welcome, Lucy Score.
I know. Someone's actually going to read and listen. What?
I know. We should get a fraction of the $8 it takes to buy it on Kindle or whatever it costs.
That was very exciting.
Yeah. And then my Thorn, I wasn't sure if I was going to mention this today, but then I was thinking I don't know. I think it's important to talk about. You know this, for the past couple of years I've been dealing with nonstop, hormone-related issues. Some doctors or specialists thinking it's thyroid-related. I was diagnosed with hypothyroidism for a while, Hashimoto's, low progesterone, low estrogen. I mean, I've been told I have everything. There was a while when I was vegan and not eating gluten, not eating nightshades. I mean, I've done everything possible, and I cannot figure out this hormone stuff. So that's just continued on. I finally was put on birth control to help with the hormone regulation, but now that's having all these side effects. So a thorn that has just kind of been affecting me, but in all these different iterations, is now coming up in this kind of new and improved way, which has just been frustrating.
Yeah.
And like I said, I wasn't originally going to talk about that because it's a little private. Also, maybe not that interesting. But I also have found talking to women in my life, more often than not, women are experiencing these symptoms, like chronic fatigue. That's like a really big one. Low mood, low libido, like all this stuff. And doctors just don't really seem to have any idea what's going on because women are like not researched.
Yeah.
Because we get periods. And so that kind of kicks us out of the research group because we're so unpredictable. And it's just really frustrating, but it's like also really validating to hear other women openly talk about this struggle.
Yeah.
So, yeah, that's been my thorn.
I'm sorry.
Yeah,
I'm glad you shared that too, because I think you're right. So many more women relate than we probably even know.
Yeah.
Also, I'm sorry, what woman has a high libido after they're 30? God.
Oh God, don't say that, because that's just going to make me think, like,
just kidding.
This is it.
Just kidding. We have such high libidos.
You hit a certain number of miles.
No.
And now it's no mas.
No, it'll come back around. It's always something, especially then with getting on birth control. It's just always something.
I know.
Yeah.
Yeah. And for women, I just feel like it's treated like I remember I saw this one doctor, this was like 2 years ago, and she tried one supplement, and the supplement didn't work. And then I waited 6 months to get back on her schedule. And then when I told her the supplement didn't work, she goes, "Have you tried telling your husband what you like?"
Oh my.
And
God.
I just started rage crying. Like, total. I have never felt by a woman so dismissed, have this symptom be like totally minimized. It's like, "Oh, have you tried using your voice?"
Oh my God. Fuck her.
I
I wish that's something that you could report. It's like not.
I know.
She didn't do anything legally wrong besides just be a fucking bitch. Ugh, disgusting. What happened to doctors in bedside manner, and why do they not like have courses in that? Because it is so rare to find a doctor with good bedside manner.
I mean, we don't have to go down this rabbit hole for too long.
Yeah,
but I do
will.
think part of it. I think part of it is like insurance companies and how, like, I would imagine a lot of doctors don't have. They're so rushed every day to see a certain number of people. I mean, it's like one after the next. It's like you're on this conveyor belt,
True.
right? Where you have to see it for a certain number of minutes, and then next, and next, and next. And I think insurance companies have dictated how.
See, my thought is like they must be so intelligent that they lose like how to normally converse with someone and more of the emotional intelligence because they're so book smart.
I think that's just from Grey's Anatomy.
Well,
surgeons.
I did like Grey's Anatomy. Okay, we'll move along.
Yeah, your rose and thorn.
My rose and thorn. So my baby just turned 1, and that's both a rose and a thorn because obviously. I would say it's a rose because all of our family was together. The in-laws, my parents, nothing blew up in our face.
Amazing.
So I'm going to take that as a win.
Yeah.
My thorn... You know what my thorn is, Amanda.
Yeah, it was a thorn for me as
were
well.
so excited to have our watch party for Red, White, and Royal Blue. So, for any of you that don't know, that is a gay romance.
It's one of my favorites.
I don't know the author. We could look it up really fast. But it's a gay romance novel that we have both read, and we loved the novel. And so we were so excited for the movie to come out. And I'm sorry, but it was a fucking disappointment.
Yeah.
Casey McQuiston.
You wrote a wonderful book. Casey.
You wrote a wonderful book. I don't think I've ever read a gay romance before that, and I did really enjoy it. It didn't necessarily give me jolts like it gave you.
Oh my God.
But I enjoyed
Casey. Oh, Casey. Thank you.
But the movie was just disappointing. They shied away from all the sex scenes, and honestly, it was just a little boring. I thought it dragged on. And I thought the things that made it really special in the book was just like completely missing in the movie.
Yeah.
You know? So that was my thorn.
I know. I felt the same way. And I read this book during the thick of COVID. I think when the book first came out, I read it all night, like didn't sleep, had to finish it, was obsessed with it, and then Googled it. And I think soon after I read it, they announced they were going to make a movie. So I have been waiting literal years for this movie to come out. I obsessively watched all the trailers. I thought, like, the casting was amazing. I was so pumped. And it just felt like, I hated, because I even told you when we sat down, I'm like, if they fucking do the pan thing whenever they're about to have, like, sex or blowjobs, whatever, when they like subtly pan the camera away. They did that in Call Me by Your Name, and I was like, are you fucking kidding me? Like, you don't do this in any other movie, but because it's two men, suddenly you have to pan slowly away.
And that's exactly what they did.
Yes.
Yeah.
And I mean, there was like that, they did show some, they didn't show like penetration, obviously.
No.
But like when they do have sex.
Yeah.
They showed the intimacy of that, which I was like, okay, good on you guys. But I don't know, it still felt like washed down.
Yeah. And one of the characters had such terrible makeup on. It looked like he was supposed to be in Twilight. I have no idea what they were doing, but they whitewashed that white boy even more, and it was terrible.
Like, I don't know if they're really trying to push the point that he was British. That they
like,
don't see
very
the sun.
pale and completely opposite of the other lead male character,
Yeah.
but it just missed the mark.
That was very weird.
That was weird.
Yeah, I mean, I'll probably watch it again.
Yeah, let's be honest.
But I'll stop it probably around the same parts where I stop the book, too, because I reread the book all the time.
Yeah.
But I always stop it when it starts to kind of hit a lull.
Yeah.
I'll just do the same thing with the movie. Because they were pretty hot.
Yeah, they are hot. I will agree.
Yeah.
All right, guys, it's time. You've heard us discuss this as our rose and thorn in previous episodes because we're so annoying and repeat ourselves that much. But we are finally doing Fourth Wing.
We are.
We are super pumped. This is Fourth Wing by Rebecca Yarros. I hope I'm pronouncing that correctly.
I think you are.
Okay, good. So, Fourth Wing is a romantasy. That's what we call it, a romantic fantasy, which is our favorite genre.
Agreed.
We just haven't done it yet because they're typically more lengthy books.
Yeah, did you read fantasy before you started reading romantasies?
No.
Me neither.
I mean, Twilight. Does that count? Everyone read Twilight.
That's still a romantic twist, though.
But yes, true. No, I don't think I've ever... Yeah, I'm sorry. Fantasy without sex?
Yeah.
Absolutely not.
Why would someone write such a thing?
Literally, what is the point of that? I can't believe you asked me that.
So sorry. Continue.
So, there's a lot of detail to this book, and we're going to do our best to just give you a descriptive overview and not get bogged down into every detail. So, this book is set at a war college in a fictional land called Navarre, and there are 4 quadrants at the college: healers, scribes, infantry, and riders. So our main female character, Violet, has studied her entire life to be in the scribe quadrant like her late father. But now she's being forced at the very last minute to enter the most dangerous quadrant of them all, which is the riders quadrant. This is the most elite quadrant, and her mother is the commanding general, and she's the one forcing Violet on this path literally the morning of, like an hour before everyone is supposed to go off to their quadrants. So Violet's older sister and brother both went into this quadrant, but as I said, it's the deadliest of them all, and people typically train their entire lives not only to make it into the quadrant on day 1, but to stay alive throughout the entire training process. So if it's so deadly, why do people want to join? Well, if you make it through the entire training process, you have the potential to gain what is known as the biggest honor, which is bonding with a dragon. So the whole reason it's called the Riders Quadrant is because it's, the Dragon Riders Quadrant. That's what it stands for. A side note about why forcing foreshadowing. Her nickname is Violent. But anyways, a side note about why forcing Violet into this quadrant is extra crazy is because she actually has a disorder where her connective tissue is really weak. So she's always getting injured, and everything physically is much harder for her to do, let alone everything physically that she's going to have to do here. So she's really small. She's honestly pretty weak.
Yeah, I'm just thinking, as a scribe, she's getting injured all of the time.
Yeah.
Her body can't handle reading books, let alone, joining this dragon rider.
Yeah, where you're, literally fighting for your life every day.
Yeah, both against outside forces and also your quadrant.
Yep, your own peers. So, Violet makes it through the first test and enters the Riders Quadrant, which is honestly such a great scene, but we're not going to get into it. But she is immediately spotted by an arch rival named Xaden. So Violet and Xaden, they don't actually know each other, but they're innately rivals because Xaden's father led a rebellion against Navarre years prior, and Violet's mom killed him. Also, Xaden's dad killed Violet's older brother. So there's lots of murder with each other's families, and therefore they hate each other, immediately rivals. But important to note, Xaden, who is the male lead of the book, is sexy as fuck.
Oh my god.
You're immediately just like,
oh my god.
ugh, yes.
He's like surrounded by shadows. He like wields them. I'm sweating. I gotta take the blanket off.
Take the baby's blanket off you. She also, on the opposite end, has her best friend over there named Dane. They were friends their whole lives growing up. Of course, he is shocked to see her and freaks out. Like, why are you here? You can't be here. You're going to die. We need to get you to the scribe quadrant. So she tries to stick with Dane and avoid Xaden, which you can guess doesn't actually work. So the book goes into Violet and Xaden's difficult relationship throughout the months of schooling, training, and many, many students dying as they try to make it through this training. So eventually she makes it to the culmination of all her hard work at the main event called the Threshing, which is where the remaining students will hopefully pair with a dragon and become bonded for life. When you bond with a dragon, it means that they only speak to you through a mind connection bond, and you get a special power. So as you can imagine, Violet becomes a super badass throughout this book. So she ends up bonding with 2 dragons, Tairn and Andarna. And number one, that's completely unheard of. Mm-hmm. No one's bonded with 2 dragons before. And Tairn is the most powerful dragon of all, who hasn't bonded with a dragon in...
With a rider.
Oh, sorry, exactly.
Yeah. In like years.
In years and years and years. So this is totally crazy and wild. Now, to make things even more complicated, Tairn and Xaden's dragon, Sigale, no idea how you say that name, are mated. So it just brings Violet and Xaden even closer because both of their dragons are mated, aka in love. So Violet and Xaden have to get closer and closer because their dragons are.
Well, yeah, and there's also like qualities that come with that. Like when you're bonded with a dragon, right? You mind fuse with them, so you can speak to them, right, telepathically. But now because they're bonded to mated dragons, now Xaden and Violet are fused telepathically as well.
And they can hear each other. Exactly.
Yeah, which we'll get into later.
So basically they're forced to start interacting with each other more and more, and Xaden takes on the responsibility of training her, which he says he's doing it out of necessity, but of course, the more they're together, the more the sexual tension builds, and we all know they're falling for each other. Eventually, they have sex. It's super hot. Mm-hmm. We will get into that. But yeah, it's important to note that the dragon and the rider's lives are bonded. So it's super important to know that if the dragon dies, the rider will die. So the connection is really important. That's why Xaden says he's going to train Violet, because if they don't make it through, their dragons are in trouble. Everyone's lives could go to shit, basically. So.
I.e. end.
Exactly. So now we're in this interesting relationship/not relationship between Violet and Xaden, where they clearly both have feelings for each other, but not acting on it. And meanwhile, Violet's power is taking a while to manifest that she's getting from Tairn, but eventually it does, and she's revealed to have the power of wielding lightning, which is a really, really powerful and highly coveted power because of what she could do in battle. But she's struggling to get a grasp of how to control it. And so the final test of the year is upon them, called War Games. And they're split into groups where Xaden and Violet go together with a bunch of other students who also happen to be the children of rebels like Xaden is. Remember, his dad had led that rebellion. So these are other children whose parents had been part of that rebellion. Something I had kind of skimmed over about the rebel children is that there's lots of rules about them at school. For example, they're not supposed to gather in groups larger than 3, and everyone is pretty wary of them because of the sins of their parents. And they were actually all forced to be in the Riders Quadrant to prove their loyalty to Navarre after their parents rebelled. So throughout this time, Violet's gotten to know a lot of them and become friends with them. She doesn't feel like anything they're doing is wrong. Obviously, we know she's close to Xaden, so she goes with him, not thinking anything of it. They head off one way, whereas Dane, remember that's her friend, and there's been a little bit of a love triangle this whole time. Dane leads the rest of the team elsewhere. And it's here where Violet learns that Xaden has been betraying her, learning that him and his rebel friends have secretly been flying out to this town for months and providing weapons to the kingdom's enemies. So she realizes she really doesn't know Zayden at all, and that's when they receive a letter from the school saying, quote, their mission is to survive if they can, aka the school has realized what they've been doing, and this was a total setup, and basically they hope that all of them are going to die. And
yeah, I feel like it's revealed here that their world is so protected from what's going on outside. That these creatures that exist, these tensions that exist, the ongoing war that's going on, everything, they're sheltered from all of that, and they're kept, so much information is kept from them. So she's been given this narrative that the rebellion is over and that
everything's safe.
Yes. And now that she's with Zayden, now that they're on this mission, it's become clear to her, like, oh my God, there's so much that my mom has lied to me about. There's so much that the other students don't know about. There's so much that's been minimized. And now Zayden, the person I've trusted more than anyone, I don't even know who he is.
Exactly. And grappling with the fact that even though he's clearly betrayed her with all these lies, it seems like he's on the right side of everything by trying to protect everyone. So that's a struggle. And of course, she really has no other option besides trying to fight with them and help. The final ending of the book, once they leave the battle, is something that we've decided not to spoil for you.
Yes.
It is a big shocker.
Sure
so just in case you haven't read the book and you want to, or this episode makes you want to read the book even more, we're going to just leave that for you to explore yourself.
Overall, what did you think?
I freaking loved this book. I loved it. I feel like I hadn't read a fantasy book that I super loved in a while. So sad that it's the only one out. I've heard that she says there's going to be 5 total in the series, which is just depressing because it's going to take like at least 5 years.
Yeah,
there's no way they're doing more than 1 book a year. So there's going to be a lot of rereading. But I really loved it. Although, interestingly, I've read a lot of Reddit threads about how much they hated it.
Really?
Yeah, they're like, this isn't even fantasy. This is like total YA romance with like pretending to be in a fantasy land. Just because you add dragons in there doesn't make it fantasy.
Okay, fine.
Which is true, but like, I don't care.
I'll bet Rebecca is crying her eyes out as she's counting her millions of dollars. Like, oh, it's so not sad. Traditional fantasy.
You fucking Reddit users. Also, is it so embarrassing to say that I'm on Reddit?
No, that's cool.
I think people have to understand, for the books that we read, the only place to connect with other people is Reddit.
Not after this podcast.
Yeah, exactly.
We're bringing it to the mainstream.
We're bringing it. So, yeah, I loved it. What about you?
Yeah, I absolutely loved it. I thought the pacing was really good. I was totally hooked on the slow burn. I also love a good love triangle.
Yes.
So one thing that was like a little bit, it's an important part, but not super necessary for the synopsis, was just the love triangle between Dane, Zayden, and Violet.
Yeah.
Which I thought was done really well. I mean, you reach a certain point where you're like, Dane, go fuck yourself.
Yeah.
But in the beginning, it's like, oh, like I kind of see where he's coming from.
Totally.
Which we'll get into in a little bit. Yeah, I thought it was fantastic.
Oh, I love when we both love something.
I know. Okay, shall we start with the questions?
Yes.
Okay. Question number 1. What was your favorite sex scene and why?
Okay. So the fact is there actually is not that many sex scenes in the book, which, as the type of reader I am, a little challenging, but it made the sex scenes all the sweeter. So I'm going to say that my favorite was the first time they had sex. And this happens like pretty close to the end of the book. And it's after a time where she accidentally kills someone using her lightning power, except don't be sad about it because she killed like a total deserving asshole.
He was like a sociopath who wanted to murder her.
Yeah, he had tried to murder her numerous times, but this was an accident when she killed him, but like good riddance. So she's all worked up.
Bob Ross would call it a happy accident.
Who calls it that?
Bob Ross, the painter.
Oh, wouldn't know that. So they finally are about to do it, and I'm going to read some quotes because
Ooh.
I know. Well, number 1, the sex scene is just hot as fuck. Like, there's mind connection involved. There's breaking of furniture. There is just like the passion is amazing.
Yeah.
But something I love is, so Zayden is still kind of fighting it. Like, you don't want this. You don't want this. Like, you're going to regret this in the morning. And she keeps saying, like, don't tell me what I want. Like, this is what I want, which I like her power. So this is happening for a little bit. And she says, unless you don't want me, because she's like, why does he keep fighting this? And He says, I always fucking want you. He groans as I squeeze. Then he lifts his head, seizes my gaze with his, and I recognize the wild need in those gold-flecked depths. It mirrors my own. You walk into a room and I can't look away. I get anywhere near you and this is what happens. Instantly hard. Fucking hell, I can barely think when you're around. He rocks his hips into my hand and my grip tightens along his stomach. Wanting you is not the problem here. Okay.
I literally wrote that entire
No, you
quote
did not.
in my notes.
No, you
yes.
did not.
Uh-huh.
Okay, so you tell me why did that stand out to you? That is literally the quote that I was like, oh, I have to read this.
So I'll write you the little note that I have is, I love how demanding she is. He gives her every reason to say no, but homegirl wants that Zayden D. And then she says at one point, stop being so fucking honorable and fuck me, Zayden. And then my note says, she says it for all of us.
Yeah. Oh my God, I love that. She really does say it for all of us. The reason I love that passage is just like, you know me, when a guy can just finally fucking admit how badly he wants you, and he's been fighting so hard to finally say, like, you know, basically he, like, brings her hand down to his dick, which is rock hard, and that's when he says, like, I always fucking want you. You walk into a room, I'm instantly hard. Yeah. Just, like, hearing all these little admissions, whereas before, he's never given her anything besides, like, looks of disdain.
Right.
You know what I mean? And to hear all these admissions of, like, I literally am obsessed with you, I, like, can't even look at you. Oh.
Yeah. It, like, harkens back to, like, Mr. Fixer-Upper, like, some of these books where it's, like, in real life, do I want the guy I love to have, like, an erection at all times in public around me? Probably not, just because, like, probably not. But in fantasy world, do I want to know he has an erection every time I sneeze?
100%. It's the sexiest sneeze you've ever seen.
I'm insulted if you don't.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So it's super hot.
It's the sexiest sneeze he's ever seen. Yeah. Also in my notes for this one, I have, there's grinding, fingering, heavy petting, dirty talk, penetration, a cornucopia of positions.
Exactly. And, like, she can hear his mind saying, look at you, you're so fucking beautiful. I mean,
love that.
Imagine hearing someone's thoughts like that.
Yeah.
You just know it's so true.
Yeah. What I really liked about this one, for my fellow Buffy the Vampire Slayer fans, it's very season 6 Smashed, when Buffy and Spike, this means nothing to you.
No.
But Buffy and Spike, they finally get together. I mean, this is like years of, like, talk about enemies to lovers. And they have sex for the first time in a house that's falling down around them. It's like this abandoned house. So they're, like, fucking up against a wall, and then the wall starts to crash down on them. So then she'll push him over to the floor. They start fucking on the floor falls. I mean, it's like the whole house.
It just collapses
Collapses around
them.
them.
And they are not stopping.
Yes. And that's what happens in the bedroom. They fuck on a desk. The desk breaks. He throws around the bureau breaks.
Yeah.
Amazing.
So hot.
Amazing.
What's your favorite?
I feel like I answered your question for you.
I'm glad you did.
I was really passionate about these sex scenes. So I love the first time they hook up.
Yeah.
Talk about bad 90s or early aughts TV shows. It reminded me of, do you remember that show? Did you ever watch Dark Angel with Jessica Alba?
No.
Oh my God. It's so bad, but so good. But basically she is like this superhuman who has, like, cat DNA in her, and every once in a while she goes through heat, so she just needs to, like, have sex with, like, grind up against anything that comes her way. And that's what this scene reminds me of. So both Zayden and Violet, they're feeling the horniness of their dragons, because their dragons are having sex. So then they are basically, like, in heat next to each other, because they're, like, feeling all of the intensity of, like, arousal and all of that, and they're trying to fight it, and then finally they give into it, and it's, like, really hot. But they just hook up. They just make up.
I mean, you know how much I love a grind against a wall.
I know. There was no thighgasm, but, like,
could have.
The foundation was there.
The foundation was laid.
Yeah.
A little oversight. Super hot kiss.
A little oversight.
Yeah. Rebecca, add a thighgasm in your next book, please.
Yes. But my favorite was when they have sex for the second, third, fourth, going on fifth time. And this was after Reunification Day, which in the book is the day that celebrates the end of the rebellion. But for people like Zayden, it's a day that celebrates basically the mass slaughtering of their families. So Zayden is really depressed. Violet looks for him, finds him in kind of like a precarious position. He's out on that, I forget what it's called, but like the
parapet?
Yeah, the parapet? The fuck that mean?
It's a bridge.
Okay, he's out on the bridge.
A bridge suspended in the air, and if you would drop, you would die.
Okay, yeah. So he's like being super emo out there, and she finds him and takes him back to his room and like starts taking care of him, and for the first time tells him that she loves him, and that just like completely moved him because this whole time he's been telling her time and time again, like, you don't love me, you don't know me, I'm not good for you. Like, he's trying to keep that distance from her because he knows ultimately he's not betraying her, but not being totally honest about like what he's doing. And she basically just like lays it all out there, like is totally honest with him about her feelings. They have, which I want to get into later, but she just has this like really honest, vulnerable conversation of like, I love you and I know you love me, but I'm not gonna rush you, but I need you to know, like, you know, I'm here for you. And that completely opens him up, and they have a ton of sex.
Yeah.
And he goes down on her, and we are big fans of that.
Yes, we are.
And then they go for 5 orgasms, and then they get interrupted on the 5th one, which I'm like, good for you. These kids and their stamina. These 19-year-olds.
Slow clap.
I mean, in a lot of ways, sounds terrible. But also, if you got it, go for it.
Give yourself a break the next day. Okay.
Yeah.
Take an Epsom salt bath.
Maybe a couple Advil. Yeah, so those are all of the
Those
sex
are all
scenes
the sex scenes.
which I actually loved. This was like a real slow burn.
This was a true slow burn. Amanda's bread and butter.
Yeah.
I'm like, bring it on a little bit more.
I was thinking about you because I saw this thing on Reddit, this thread where someone was like, does anyone else skip all the sex scenes in romance books because it just like gets in the way of the story? And I'm like, sorry, there's a story?
Literally, what the...
Does anyone else pick out the chocolate chips in their chocolate chip cookies? Because you just love fucking
This person
dough?
should be imprisoned.
Get out of this Reddit immediately.
Why are you here? You are not a part of this community.
We don't take kindly to questions like that. Anyway. Okay, next question. Why do you think this book has gained so much popularity so quickly? Do you think it's the story, the characters?
I mean, I think it's a combination. Number one, the romantasy community out there is big. Mm-hmm. And there are only so many authors doing it and doing it well.
Doing it well.
Yeah. A captivating story, love, a slow burn romance, hot sex, plus mythical creatures. Like, you're asking for a lot. Yeah.
And solid world building, too.
Yes, exactly. I mean, the detail that goes into this world building. Mm-hmm. So I'm not surprised that it gained popularity so quickly because people are really looking for their next big fantasy book. Mm-hmm. And I just think she delivered.
Yeah.
Like, it's so much easier to go find a mystery novel. There's 1.5 million. Like, and don't get me wrong, I love mysteries. But that's just a genre that's much easier to write, and there's so many out there. And I just think it's really hard to find romantasies.
I think one thing about romantasies that are becoming really popular right now is like, reading them, you could see the movie. Like, I think there's something different about how, like, the flow of some books now, that it feels akin to like binging a really good TV show. Like, I feel like shows are made now to binge.
Yes.
That they stream it and you're just supposed to go next to next to next.
Yeah.
And I feel like some of these books feel that way. That it's like they are designed with cliffhangers. They're designed in a way that you can't put it down. You have to obsessively read to keep figuring out what happens
Exactly.
next.
I completely agree. There's so much action. There's so many cliffhangers. And they do, like, this buildup of sexual tension. You're just like, I can't put it down because I'm like, when is this happening?
Yes, I need that dopamine burst.
Oh my God, good to me.
Yeah, give me that hit.
Yes.
Yeah.
So, no, not surprised.
Yeah. I also thought this book had like some familiar tropes, but some of them she turned on their head a little bit. Like, there's the trope of like the fish out of water, like she doesn't belong there. But in some of the books, it's like fish out of water and everyone's against her and she has to like harden herself and she has to like fight and can't trust anyone. And what I actually really liked about this book is like she made a lot of friends.
Yeah.
Like, yeah, there were some people who were against her because they thought she was weak and therefore like a liability. But there was like this community that rallied around her, that helped her, that trained her.
Yeah.
And she was like open to connection. It wasn't like some guy had to like charm the pants off her. Like, she wanted connection. She wanted love. Like, it just
Yeah.
It just, it was different. It was different.
You know
than
what?
other
That
tropes.
reminds me too. Obviously, the enemies to lovers trope, but typically, the enemies to lovers trope, like, they have sex because of something, and that's when they start realizing that they like each other and seeing the good in each other. But the sex was the last thing for them. Like, they actually just really liked each other as human beings, even though he was more the one trying to deny it and push her away. And she was able to admit fully what she was feeling and, like, now I want to have sex. So,
and she was, like, fully confident in
100%.
like, we're fucking.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. What did you think of the Dane-Xaden love triangle? Is there any part of you that thinks Dane may have been a better fit?
Yes. So as a reminder, Dane is her best friend that she grew up with, and she is, like, so happy to see him there and to be with him. And he at first comes off as, like, the protector. Like, we have to get you out of here. You're going to die. Trying to get her to the squad quadrant. And at first, she appreciates it. It very soon becomes much more toxic, where it's like, he doesn't believe in me at all. He's not listening to what I say when she's telling him, like, I want to be here. Let me do this. Like, I can do this. And he kind of goes, behind her back a few times to try to remove her, all, quote, for the good of her and her life. And eventually he ends up really betraying her, which is how the rebels are outed to the entire school for, like, what they're doing and the whole war game situation that actually ends up because of Dane. But anyways, the love triangle part. I mean, you're definitely attracted to Dane at first, too. I'm a sucker for a protective guy. Like, you're right, I am gonna die. I'm a damsel.
Let's just make out about it.
Remove me. So, like, of course, did I like Dane? Yes. Did I easily see what this was gonna turn into? Yes. I kind of wish they gave him a few more attributes that we really liked to make the love triangle a little bit more believable, because it's like pretty early on you're like, all right, Dane, fuck off, like, you're annoying. Like, you know what I mean? So I understand. I think it was at the same time, I do think it was always coming from a good place, even if his mind's a little warped, like, and he should kind of believe in her more. I do think it was always for his need to protect her.
No, I agree with that, because I think this is one of the tropes that we've seen before. We saw this in these Hollow Vows. We saw this in ACOTAR. Like, at first, you see the protagonist in a really scary, kind of precarious situation where her well-being is the concern, right? Because we don't know her. All we know is that she's super frail. She is not equipped to be where she is. And kind of, obviously, she's the lead of the book, so she's not going to get killed off. But
she's so small, she couldn't even, like, get up on a dragon. Like, how is she ever going to do this?
She couldn't carry her backpack. You know what I mean? Like, so you can kind of see, like, oh, good, she has someone there to protect her, and that's really attractive. Also, you know that she's been in love with him forever.
Yeah.
So if you've ever, like, loved a sibling's friend, or, like, an older kid growing up, and as you're getting, it just... I can totally relate to that. Like, you just totally have all this reverence for this person, and now finally they're looking at you, and it's like, oh, like it might happen right after all these years. And I love that storyline. I could totally I just obsessively watched and read The Summer I Turned Pretty. Like, I love that dynamic. But it is so interesting how quickly you fall into this belief of, oh, he's acting this way because he wants to protect her and he knows what's best for her. But when you take a step back, you realize, like, oh, God, it's so belittling, and it minimizes what someone's really capable of or what strengths they have.
Exactly.
And then you're like, oh, it's kind of gross.
Especially when you have Xaden, the complete opposite, being like, you are capable.
Yeah, and, like, I'm not going to baby you. I'm not going to feel bad for you.
No.
You have to work, and you have to train and kick ass.
Exactly. Sorry, Dane. Fuck off.
Yeah, I mean, I liked the love triangle. I thought it was interesting, and then at a certain point, it truly is all right, Dane. It's like embarrassing.
You're embarrassing yourself.
We're all
no one here likes you.
Cringing. I know how quickly you felt. But it makes me feel bad because, like we said, so much information about the outside world is kept from these kids. Yeah. So he thinks he's doing the right thing, the dutiful thing. He's up against the child of one of the main guys in the rebellion, so it's like, what the fuck, this guy is against. Like, I totally get it, but it's not sexy.
It sounds sexy.
Yeah, not up against Xaden. Xaden has shadows and tattoos.
He's just hot.
He's just hot. I'm sorry, Dane.
Yeah.
Okay. If you had the ability to mentally fuse with a love interest or partner, would you? Right. It's important to keep in mind that just as you would have access to their thoughts, they'd have access to yours.
Exactly, which is why I'm going to have to say no. Let's break it down, okay? Honestly, women, I feel like you will mostly agree with me. Here's the thing. If I could only hear his thoughts, I would be more inclined to say yes. Because, not that I'm like some sexpert or sex wizard, but like...
Sex wizard?
Sex wizard. We're in Fantasyville. I'm like thinking of wizards and dragons and...
Totally.
Extraterrestrials. So, but like... We all know that women, as women, we feel much more insecure than I would believe men do. And the things that we notice on ourselves that we're like, ew, and this and that, like, they just are worshiping us. They're like, oh my God, I get to have sex? Okay. And it's like way more exciting for them when we're like, oh no, my stomach looks bad at this angle. I can with 100% certainty say that is not what they're thinking at all. So I actually think for all of us, it would be a really beautiful surprise to be like, oh my God, they just think I'm so hot. And like hearing all these thoughts from them during sex about how amazing we are and how hot we are. That's what I would like to think.
That's, again, Fantasyland.
But I'm going to say no because I definitely don't want him to know what I'm thinking. Nope, not there. Nope.
You found it last time.
Nope, not place. That either.
Too far south.
So I'm just going to have to say no. I think it's a little too personal. If I'm being nice. What would you say?
Yeah, I don't think I have as much of a romantic view of what men think as you do. And I think let's keep the mystery alive. I don't know, I mean, no, do I think my partner is as critical of me as I am? No, I don't think he's like, oh, look at that little hair beneath her belly button. Gross. You know, like, I can't believe she didn't pluck that stray hair. No, I don't think he's thinking about that shit at all. But I also, like, I don't need a glimpse behind the kimono on that one.
You're just so much more articulate than me. That sentence made complete sense. I'm going to have the probably completely biased and not scientifically backed up belief that when guys have sex with me, they just think it is hot as fuck, and that's that.
Basically, it's like having sex with Xaden. The whole time he's just like, God, you're so beautiful. God, you're so sexy. God. Yeah, and, you know, I think...
And I'm just going to choose to believe that.
I want you to live in that world.
Thank you. I'm going to live in that space.
Yeah, I don't know if I'm healthy enough to think that yet. But I'll get there.
But yeah, you know what? I think sex is intimate enough. We do not need to add the extra level of intimacy that is hearing your partner's thoughts.
I also just feel like half the time I'm just thinking like, don't fart, don't fart, don't fart, don't fart.
Yeah, we don't want your husband to know that.
That's 100%.
I'm kind of thinking, like, when can I read again?
You don't want him to think of all the characters you're running through your mind.
Yeah, I'm like, make sure you say his name, not the character's name.
Oh, Risa.
Xaden.
So it's for everyone's best interest that we keep these thoughts in our own little noodles.
Do not say noodle ever again.
Don't word police me when I'm being vulnerable. Okay. Last question.
Okay.
What did you think of Violet as the protagonist? In what ways did she feel familiar, and in what ways did she stand out compared to other protagonists?
Okay. Well, I think this is interesting. You know, as the lead character, she has this disability, and I don't think we often see disabilities represented in these books, so I thought that was super cool. Mm-hmm. At the same time, I don't know if they ever, like, put a name to it. or not. Like, I couldn't say
remember
what it was called.
Mm-hmm.
But I liked how she had this disability that already put her at a disadvantage. And I really liked her tenacity about overcoming it. I thought what was really refreshing is how much she knows her own feelings and emotions and isn't scared to say that to Xaden. Like, she says to him, I know I'm falling for you. I'm going to risk my heart right now because I'm choosing to. I want to. I'm letting you know this. Let's have sex. Like, she's not repressing it from herself. She's not repressing it from him either. She's deciding for herself that, like, I might get my heart broken if he doesn't feel the same way, but I'm still going to be honest with him and myself, and this is what I want.
Yeah.
So I really appreciated that there wasn't so much of this, like, agonizing back and forth and, like, lying to myself that he's not this great and I don't really like him. She's like, no, here are my feelings. This is what's up.
Yeah.
So I thought that was different than what typically we see happening.
Related to that, I also liked that they didn't... I feel like a trope that does come up in a lot of these books is that the girls are normally virgins. And not that that's an issue, but I like that she wasn't a virgin. And it's not... It's alluded to once, where she's like, God, I miss having sex.
Yes.
And then that's it. And it's not... Because I think in a lot of these books, it's like... Then it's like this big deal when she chooses a guy to have sex with, and they're like, are you sure? And then they slowly penetrate, and it hurts for a second, and then the pleasure comes in, which is like, whose experience was that?
Yeah.
But this one, like, sex just, I mean, everyone was fucking.
Yeah.
You know, and everyone was fucking all different genders. Like, there was no judgment of any of that.
Yeah.
And then same with her. Like, it wasn't like, oh man, like, Xaden's gonna be the one to take my virginity, you know.
No.
It was just like, no, I really like him. We have really strong feelings for one another. And I'm turned on by him, and I want to fuck him. And it was like...
That's such a good point.
Yeah.
I've been reading a series where it's all about, like, how important her virginity is.
Ugh,
and
hate that.
This is a nice reprieve.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, that's, like, the only thing she's coveted for is, like, the fact that she's a virgin.
Right.
Yeah. I mean, don't get me wrong, it's, like, a really fucked up book in a lot of ways, so...
Right up your alley.
That is just one of them.
No, I totally agree. I really liked that she knew what she wanted. There's this one moment of ambivalence that I actually wrote down because I just loved it so much. And it's, they've had sex, they're kind of flirting. He's already said, like, we're not going to be in a relationship together. And she's like, well, you know, she keeps telling him, like, then I can't have sex with you because I can't separate sex and love, right? And she just says it so bluntly.
Yeah.
No games. And then there's kind of this moment where she's thinking it through because he's, like, really pushing it, like, kind of, like, flirting super hard. And she says, fuck it. I can have him, right? I can take exactly what he's offering and enjoy every single moment. We can shred every piece of furniture in this room and then move to his. But where would this leave us in the morning? Right here, both wanting and only one of us brave enough to take it. And I deserve more than a relationship that's only on his terms. And then she says to him, you don't get to dictate how I feel, so we're not doing this again until I want to risk my heart. And if I fall, that's my problem, not yours. You're not responsible for my choices. And as I was reading, because I was thinking, like, where the fuck was this voice when I was in my early 20s? Where it was like, yeah, you can acknowledge that you want someone and you kind of want to pursue something, but pursuing it is going to be fruitless, right?
Yeah.
If they're not going to meet you halfway.
Yeah.
So instead of putting yourself in these positions to be taken advantage of or giving yourself to someone who's just taking and not reciprocating, you can actually just say no. And you can feel emboldened by that.
Exactly. To be able to admit both to yourself and to him, like, I can't separate sex and feelings.
Yeah.
So I can't do this.
And that's not embarrassing.
No.
It's not shameful. It doesn't make you weak or like a girl.
Exactly.
Yeah. I loved that.
God, I agree wholeheartedly.
Yeah. I just think, and she's not like fighting him. She's not blaming him or name calling. She's just kind of laying out where she's coming from. And I just loved her. I thought she was such a fantastic protagonist.
Violet, a.k.a. Violence.
Violence, that's what he called her.
Yeah.
Violence.
Oh, what a sexy little nickname.
What would Xaden's nickname be? Zay Zay?
Ew. Absolutely not.
Nope. Just Xaden.
Just Xaden. I don't even like Zay.
Zay?
No, it's got to be Xaden.
Xaden.
Yeah. So what would you give this book as a rating?
I would say sex scenes, like a 9.
Okay.
No, I'm going to say 8.5 because I loved the slow burn, but then once they really have sex, then it's kind of like glossed over a little bit.
Okay.
I could use like a little bit more detail.
Yeah.
But as a book, I would say 9.
I'm in complete agreement. I could use more sex. I could use more detail, so I'll stick with 8.5.
Mm-hmm.
And I would give it a 9 overall because it was great, but it's just really hard to get to a 10.
I know.
So I think a 9 is generous.
Yeah. We need to start reading books that we don't like, because all of our ratings are like 8s, 9s, and 10s.
I don't really want to read books that I don't like.
I also don't want to like shit on someone's...
That doesn't bother me.
Of work.
That, I don't care. But like, why would I force myself to read something I don't like? We want to give good ratings.
That's true. Although this next book that we're reading for next time, neither of us has read.
Yes. It's called Rush by Maya Banks. It's book 1 of the Breathless trilogy. Yeah. My mom's friend recommended it. It's her favorite author. So shout out to you. I won't say your name just in case.
I feel like we should call her like one of our listeners.
Yes.
Requested it.
She is one of our listeners. She's amazing. We would send her our episodes before we ever were publishing them, just for her to give us some feedback. And
like our
she's been amazing. So we are going to read Maya Banks as one of her favorite authors. So we've chosen Rush by Maya Banks. That will be next week's episode.
It will, yes.
So we hope you'll read it and join us.
Yeah, if you have any questions, any thoughts, send us an email, eroticallyneuroticpodcast@gmail.com. Find us on Instagram, Erotically Neurotic Podcast. I know our names.
I know. We've got to look and double check. All right, well, we will
see you next time.
Perfect.
Bye. Love you.
Love you. Thank you for being a part of our Erotically Neurotic community. Don't forget to email your book recommendations, book club questions, and or any erotic stories, embarrassing moments, or sexual triumphs you want to share. Email us at eroticallyneuroticpodcast@gmail.com and follow us on Instagram at Erotically Neurotic Podcast.
Hi there, Amanda here. I think it's worth noting that any and all thoughts shared in these episodes are a reflection of my own personal and constantly evolving opinions, and not that of my profession or licensing board. While I am a therapist, I am not your therapist. Therefore, nothing I say in this podcast should be taken as therapy advice or guidance. Thank you so much for being a part of our sexy book club, and tune in next week for our next episode.